Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with another playlist video. And in this one, I'm going to 1976. It's not definitive, it's just the albums that I've really been playing this week. So there'll be loads of others. And when I do a year like this, whatever the year is, I do other episodes based around that year as well. So if you're thinking, why didn't I mention Rainbow Rising, for instance, as it's 1976? I have mentioned Rainbow Rising actually quite a lot. But I've tried to give other things a little bit of a view as well. And they are, I think, primarily vinyl apart from the last couple, but there will be some CD only stuff coming up as well as I look at different, more recent years. Okay, where shall I start with this? I'm going to start with Montrose. And somebody said to me in the comments, Phil, is there ever a week that goes by without you not mentioning Montrose? And I hadn't thought of that before, but you might be right. And it is Jump On It. From 1976, with a typical Hypnosis cover, which, of course, the band must have thought, oh, for God's sake. Ronnie Montrose said, jump on it, as in jump on it, if you have a chance in life, jump on it. The designers at Hypnosis obviously thought something completely different on that score. However, how did you even find out about music like this back then? Because you only had Melody Maker, NME, sounds. There's no Kerrang at this point. There's no internet. So there's only so much column space for things to be reviewed and to say what was coming out. So most times I would go to the record shop and I would go from A to Z and all the various artists and everything, go through literally everything. I'd go into Virgin or HMV and go through everything, even through if it was bands I was really familiar with, just in case there was something in amongst that band's catalogue that had appeared out of nowhere that I knew nothing about. And this was one of them. Montrose, Jump On It, Warner Brothers. I'd wanted it so much to be an improvement on Warner Brothers Presents. The first Montrose album is my, you can only take one album with you. We're leaving on a spaceship to Mars tomorrow. What are you going to take? It would be the first Montrose album. Paper Money, I love, but I knew at the time it was kind of like, oh, they've dropped the ball here. And Warner Brothers Presents, Ted Templeman wasn't producing it. Another ball was dropped. Some great moments, but I was so hoping that seeing that Jack Douglas, wasn't Ted, Jack Douglas would produce this, that maybe this was a step in the right direction. It is a step in the right direction. But it wasn't quite all the way there. But it is one of my favourite albums featuring Ronnie Montrose. There they are on the inside cover. Let's Go. And What Are We Waiting For? Great rock openers, very AOR, very melodic rock. This is 1976. I felt, oh, this is going to be really good. Tough Sedge was an instrumental, mysterious, unusual. Still got a tick from me. Music Man. I love the track Music Man. I identified with that. I want to be a music man. The strings on it. And this is obviously Bob James on vocals. Obviously, again, the difference from Sammy Hagar. But I think on the first album, I wasn't sure. But on this one, I felt that his vocals were blending in with where Ronnie wanted to take the band. And I thought it worked really, really well. On the next side was Jump On It with that kind of strange guitar effect, voice effect, but a great rock song in itself. Rich Man and Crazy for You with the kind of Dan Hartman song. One of them was, of course, What You're Waiting For was Dan Hartman as well from Edgar Winter. But they were kind of more poppy. But again, I could understand that Ronnie Montrose was trying to expand his catalogue, the audience, etc. Although at the time, how old was I? 17. I was just wanting another Space Station number 5. All right. And then Merry Go Round is on, which is a very unusual song in a way. It has that fairground bit in the middle. And I remember, someone saying to me, Phil, I love that. It's one of those typical Ronnie Montrose all over the place guitar solos. And I thought about that and I thought, yeah, he does play these guitar solos that are all over the place, but moving around the kind of middle, lower register, really feeling with the lyrics and where the feeling of the song's going. And this had that. And the way that Bob James sings this and the echo at the end, and I don't know what it is about it. Got that Warner Brothers label, by the way. Sorry, I'm jumping around, but I just love this. There was something about the vocals and merry-go-round and the words that really got to me where I was working in factories at the time and trying to imagine a time when I wasn't going to be in a factory and trying to escape to go down to the seaside. There was something about the way that this song delivered, especially at the end with that slight echo reverb on the vocals, that just gave me hope. It's hard to explain. And now I should be quoting some of those words back to you, but I can't because it was more of a feeling than the actual words itself. But Merry-Go-Round by Montrose is one of my favourite tracks from that album, from that period. Right, the second one in is going to be controversial, okay, because of the artist and the way they're perceived now compared with what they were perceived in 1976. So I'm going to set the scene. It's 1976. I'm buying Sounds. That's my music paper of choice. And I still bought lots of singles because I couldn't afford lots of albums. And Sounds reviewed rock singles. They were very much the champion of rock music. They were going to champion punk as much as the NME, but there was very much a feeling in Sounds that they really championed hard rock, heavy metal, whatever you wanted to call it. So when Deep Purple released Smoke on the Water as a single in 77, they made the front of Sounds by saying the old wave, strikes back or something. They reviewed a single in this particular week in 1976, and it was Single of the Week by an artist that I had never heard of, although it wasn't their first solo album. And the single was called Dog Eat Dog. And I went to buy it. There were no picture sleeves in those days. I just bought this single called Dog Eat Dog by Ted Nugent. And I went home and stuck it on, and I thought it was the most exciting thing I'd heard for yonks. I just loved the riff, the way that the song came in. I loved the vocalist style. Of course, it was Meatloaf on vocals, who of course was unknown then. I loved the guitar solo, the kind of Chuck Berry-ish solo type the delivery of it. I just loved the song. So I did go out and rush to buy Free For All by Ted Nugent when it appeared. And I was incredibly disappointed by the opening track called Free For All because Ted can't sing, okay? Or not as well as the other people he's ever had around him, for those of you who say he can. But to me, it just didn't work. And I thought Free For All was kind of like, what have I done? Because records are expensive. However, Dog Eat Dog, and it was a longer version than the one that I bought on single. So it was even better. The solo went on for longer. The riff came back in later on. But it was writing on the wall. Now, Ted had a reputation, I think, for finding a groove or something that worked and then doing it again and again and again. So this was kind of like a reworking of Stranglehold of the previous album. And he would do this, yes, again, a couple of albums later. But writing on the wall with that kind of bass rhythm sound and the guitar and Meatloaf's impassioned vocals was one of the highlights. 7 minutes odd long this track was, and I absolutely loved it. I cannot identify with the guy's politics at all where we are now, but back then in 76 it was just music. I bought it for the music. I listen to it now for the music. And Turn It Up, another great track as well. On the side two. Side two had Together, which was a ballad, a really gorgeous ballad with Meatloaf singing, great guitar, lots of phase guitar solos on it. Street Rats and Hammer Down are two classic riff-centric rock songs. Absolutely superb. Like My Way is a great fast song, and I Love You So I Told You a Lie is also fantastic. But look who's on this. Apart from Meatloaf, who obviously would go on literally in 2 years' time to be one of the largest acts in the world. But it's Cliff Davis on drums, Rob Grange on bass, Derek St. Holmes on vocals and rhythm guitar. Derek St. Holmes also had a great voice, great guitar player. And I don't think Ted bettered this. This was a high watermark, and I can still play this. Obviously, the albums I mention in these playlists, I really do play, and I love this. When I was with the Handsome Beasts in the early 80s, and we used to play music before the band came on, I used to put Writing on the Wall on as one of the songs, and people used to say, "Who's this?" But it's a great track. Just listen to that. Anyway, so that is my second choice for 1976, Free for All by Ted Nugent. So where should we go next for 1976? I'm going to go to Led Zeppelin and Presence. I recently put this on as a post on the channel, and I've posted about this album several times in the Facebook group and elsewhere, really. Led Zeppelin, 1976. I feel like I need to offer an apology to someone I can't offer an apology to. And one of my best friends back then was Ray Fullard, tremendous drummer. He used to be in a band called Liago, and his older brother, Alan. And Ray's no longer with us anymore. Massive muso, big Purple fan, Sabbath fan, but Zeppelin was everything to him, absolutely everything to him. Zeppelin were everything, because I've said before, when we crossed over in 1975 to Physical Graffiti, there was no doubt whether it was Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, or Black Sabbath, that trinity of rock music. And I know some people mention Uriah Heep, but in the UK, they were way further down. It was those three. And it was Zeppelin, Zeppelin, Zeppelin. And Zeppelin, obviously, in 1976, it was Song Remains the Same and Presence and everything. And I caught the bus to work, and Ray was on the bus. And he said, what do you think? What do you think of Presence? You know, and I said, well, it's okay. It hasn't got any of that acoustic rubbish on it. It's a terrible thing to say, but I did it. I did it because I didn't like my job. I didn't like what I was doing. And I lashed out because, you know, I was just really into, you know, I just wanted rock music. Just give me the tracks. Just give me, you know, one after the other. You know, if you're going to be a rock band, don't put a ballad on track 4 on side 1. Move that away. Just do me the, you know, give me the guitars, give me the riffs. So I said that, and I shouldn't, because he said that was a terrible thing to say, Phil. Terrible thing to say, because he knew I was trying to be a musician as well. You know, you say there's none of that acoustic rubbish. I mean, the acoustic side of Led Zeppelin said it's where all the magic is. And I do regret saying that, because I didn't mean it. In fact, my feeling is on this album is it needed some of that. It needed some of the Led Zeppelin light and shade that every album had up to this point. How do I think about this now? I play this album far more than I ever thought I would. There are basically 3 tracks, and it always has felt like that to me. But those tracks are the main ones. Nobody's Fault But Mine, with that phased guitar riff and the thunderous drums. T for One, which is fantastic, and Joe Bonamassa does a good version of that. And it's Achilles' Last Stand. The others, they always felt like they were kind of like added into the mix because they hadn't really got much else to do. I know that's unfair for those of you who see Led Zeppelin as your children, and it's very hard to pick which is the best one. And as I've said, this is one of those albums I do play. I just let it roll. You know, and I do appreciate it. And the cover is mysterious and all the rest of it. But Achilles' Last Stand, from the very beginning, I just felt that was special. Now, we're in 1976. I'm not talking about Rainbow Rising, because I talked about that loads, and it will appear again later on. Don't panic, but just search for Rainbow Rising. You'll see that I've talked about it loads. But this obviously came out that year, and Achilles' Last Stand is epic. The way it starts, that mysterious, almost Eastern feel as it fades in, and the vocal delivery, John Bonham's drums, that throbbing kind of bass and guitar, the whole oral mix of this track. And when we get to what I used to almost feel like the Viking kind of vocal towards the end, you know, that Plant does of the multi-layered vocals, and that comes round and round in circles on that. It's just over 10 minutes of of Zeppelin majesty, really. It would be one of those songs that if I do my imaginary single album compilation on Led Zeppelin, then Achilles' Last Stand will be on it. I think it's one of their finest moments, and it kind of demonstrates what Led Zeppelin were about, what Jimmy Page could do, what Rob Plant could do, what they all four of them could create something as amazing as Achilles' Last Stand. Opening track side 1 and the opening track side 2 was the other one I played, and T for 1. But if I had to keep thinking back to what it was like for me, who had bought this in '76, what was my habit? What was my habits like? I put on side 1, track 1, and side 2, track 1, and then took it off. That's what I did then, because I wanted to play other things. Did anyone else do this? When I was getting ready to go out on a Friday night, after coming home from work and getting over my overalls and getting ready to go out, I used to just play tracks to get myself in the zone for going out to a pub or, to a rock disco. I used to put tracks on. I mean, I know nowadays, because we're all older, we play a whole album. We feel like we're playing disrespectful to the artist. We only play like track 3 or whatever. But back then, by the time my mates picked me up or I went to catch the bus, there were records everywhere. There were records everywhere outside the sleeves. Yeah, outside the sleeves. I didn't clean them. I just put them away and played them again. They were like tracks I played to get me in the zone, and Achilles' Last Stand was one of them. Led Zeppelin, 1976. What next? Now this is another good one. I am sifting through these deliberately. I'll have to take this one out as well, because otherwise I can't remember all the tracks. I can remember all the tracks, but it's just easier this way. Okay, all right. Okay. But this is one of my favourite albums. It's one of my favourite albums. This New England by Wishbone Ash. This was such an important album for me at that time. I used to come home after I'd done a bit of overtime to get some extra money to buy records with. And I'd sit in the kitchen, because my mum and dad and my sister had already eaten their tea. And so they used to put me a little table in the kitchen. And I used to listen to Robin Valk on BMRB, on Birmingham radio. And there was like a rock show. Is it Robin Valk? It is Robin Valk, isn't it? And he'd play like all sorts of stuff. Pat Travers was another one I could have picked. But he played tracks from this album, because the album before, which wasn't that far before Locked In, was Wishbone Ash Losing Their Way. And so this was seen as Wishbone Ash finding their rock credibility again. And it was actually the first Wishbone Ash album I ever bought, because of the tracks I heard on Robin Valk's radio, sitting at home. And I remember buying this, and it became something I played all the time to get me into the mood of going out again, but also songs that I almost sang aspects of the guitar in my head, walking around the factory floor. Where was I working? Selly Oak somewhere, terrible factory. And there were songs on here that really, really helped me. Mother of Pearl, what a song that is. What a riff, the way it starts. It's incredible. In all of my dreams, you rescue me. Absolutely brilliant song. And again, the vocal delivery of the guitar lines, because that's what they're like. They're so melodious, so hummable, so memorable. Runaway. What a real rock, metal-esque song that is. And Lorelei. And then Outward Bound on side 2, where there's a section where, one of the guitar guys, whether it's Andy Powell or the other guy whose name has escaped me, Laurie Wasfield from Home, slides his plectrum down the strings. There's that certain point, and When You Know Love, Lonely Island, and Candlelight. There is not one bad track off this album. There is not one bad track. Why would there be a bad track on it? It's just Laurie Walsfield, Powell, Turner, Upton. I love it. I love this album. And the remastered CD in the vintage years box set is the one to get. But yeah, I just love it. Every home should have one of these. I think this is one of those. This is an important record. Everyone talks about Argus, don't they? But I think I never tire of that. Never tire of it. So we're rock, but we moved into a kind of proggy feel, sort of, have we? Yeah, I think we have. Camel, 1976, Moon Madness. Took me a long time to realise that was two people with their arms around each other on the front cover. But this kind of like textured sleeve and this imagery, this was the first entry for me into the world of Camel. It still is my favourite Camel album, is it? Yeah, it is. It's slightly one notch ahead of the Snow Goose, which would be, that is not my favourite of 75, but this. And it primarily because of the track called Lunar Sea. That whole way that starts with the mellotron and everything, I just think it's absolutely brilliant. There's so many different live versions of that. There's a bit of vocals on here to Gatefold Sleeve with a picture of the band. But this was, in 76, I was very tentatively going into the world of progressive rock. And this was a couple of my mates kept saying, you've got to listen to Camel. And again, as I've said before, I've said recently on the review show about I didn't always, bands like Renaissance, unless your friends bought something or you took the risk. So I bought Jump On It by Montrose because none of my mates had, for example, and some of my mates had bought this, so I knew what it sounded like going around to their house after we'd come home from the pub, and I decided to have a kebab or a curry, not necessarily in that order, and they put on something like, whereas I'd be thinking, well, put on some rock music, full of beer, but they put on something more gentle. And Camel was one of them, and Lunar Sea was just brilliant. Great album, great artwork. Right, there's sort of two to go. Tommy Bolin, Private Eyes. I bought this before Teaser, which might seem unusual, but those of you who know my Tommy Bolin journey know I was dead against Deep Purple without Richie Blackmore, until I eventually bought Come Taste the Band and realised how wrong I was. And then by that time, of course, that's Made in Europe, Saraband, John Lord, this period, 76. This came out, so I bought it. And when I got it home and played it, told one of my mates who was a massive fan of Tommy Bolin, said, you bought the wrong one, Phil, you should have started with the Teaser. That would have been better. That's got metal, jazz, fusion, reggae, all sorts of stuff on it, funk, and I thought, and I did get that, and that's another story. But I did like this, and I liked it because there was so much variety on it, really. Busting Out for Rosie was a kind of reggae-esque track, but that guitar solo at the end, that was something else, wasn't it? That was really clever, to have that kind of guitar work out at the end of a song with that kind of rhythm and everything. Sweet Burgundy, his voice, such a beautiful voice. I'm going to leave one track out. Shake the Devil, opening track on side 2. Gypsy Soul, lovely song. Hello Again. Oh God, what a ballad that is. The way he sings that, it's such a thing about meeting someone you thought you wouldn't see again, and his vocal and the strings, it's just gorgeous. And You Told Me That You Love Me, great slide guitar solo at the end. What track have I missed out? Post Toasty, 9.5 minutes. Last track on side 1. Yeah, it's an obvious type riff, isn't it? It's an obvious type You Really Got Me type riff. But who cares? The way it starts, the vocal part, but it's when it gets into those middle sections of the funky bass line and the really busy drumming and that guitar solo that just with all that reverb just floating in the background. Then we come in back and we come out with all those funky little riffs. It is a tour de force of brilliance. You always, because it fades, you just feel, don't you, that somebody somewhere, and knowing what Tommy Bolin was like on Teaser, where he did so many takes, so many recordings, that it still hasn't emerged that somebody has found a version of it with all the, and just left it to run to the end. It's one of his finest moments. Great. It's ironically about a song about post-toasty, about, you know, drugs, the danger of drugs, and of course what happened sadly to Tommy. But his guitar playing on this, one of the things about Tommy Bolin is how he'd have, this is why his style is so unique to himself, he would have certain licks that are his and his alone. They were like trademark licks. He would do certain things at multiple times in multiple songs in multiple bands. But each time he did it was slightly different, but you knew it was him. You know, and this song has got all of that in. Just an amazing artist, an amazing solo album. Tommy Bolin, Private Eyes from 1976, CBS Records. This is the UK edition. There is an American one within in a sleeve with a picture of Tommy on and more information, because what's interesting about this being the UK one is there's no information about who plays on it. There's no credits. So obviously the inner sleeve should have been included, but they didn't include it. And I bought it at the time, so it's not like because it was a later reissue and they just didn't do that anymore. They just didn't. I'm still trying to find one. I'm just going to touch briefly on this because at the time of me doing 1976, it's coming, or this will go out around the time of the Sabbath end of Real Ends concert. But this is an important album from 76 for me. There's loads of others I could pick, and I will pick, but because this album, which I trust, because you can trust all the Black Sabbath albums. Henry Rollins says you can only trust the first 5 or 6 cobblers. When this came out, and I've said this multiple times, there was no one that said, God, have you heard the new Sabbath album? It's terrible. You know, what's wrong with them? Have they lost the plot? That is not what any one of my mates said in Birmingham once. Everybody that heard this thought it was a new Black Sabbath, a new beginning, exciting. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was buying it. Everyone was loving it. Everybody. Lots of Sabbath historians now, people maybe weren't there then, I don't know, kind of see it as like the beginning of the end. Rubbish. I was going to work in a factory in Aston. I really was. I was in Sabbath territory, going to work at the GEC. Terrible place. Terrible factory. It's a wonder I'm still here. You know, so no health and safety back then. You know, drinking 5 pints of beer and then going up a 50-foot ladder over an acid bath. And there's no tape recorders, as I've said, so I've played this over and over again. I've recorded it in my brain so that when I'm on the bus and when I'm going up that ladder, I am singing Backstreet Kids in my head. I am singing that song and that riff in my head. Backstreet Kids, what a fantastic, modern, thunderous heavy metal song. You won't change me, you're damn right you won't. Damn right you won't. Tony Iommi's solo in that song. Oh, he reached into my heart and he grabbed it and he said, it's going to be all right, mate. Phil, just stay focused. You're going to be out of here soon. It's all right. Gently said by Mr. Ward. And Gypsy. Oh, we're channeling a bit of Queen there, aren't we, in those vocals? Almost a bit progtastic. Oh, but what, again, the guitar solo. So you want to be a gypsy? And the guitar solo. Wow. All moving parts stand still. Off the wall. I remember that being talked about in Sounds. Rock and Roll Doctor. What a riff. Might seem obvious to some people, but in the hands of Tony Iommi, It's his and his alone. So you want to be a rock and roll doctor, got to call the rock and roll doctor. And she's gone. Great ballad, a different side to Ozzy, a beautiful side to Ozzy, a beautiful song with such wonderful lyrics. And then Dirty Women, which again, going back to Robin Valk and BMRB show, they did some thing where they asked people to vote in the most important songs to have ever come out of Birmingham, and Dirty Women came first. But it's a song about it's a song that works. It's not the normal Sabbath material, perhaps, but it's a tour de force for Iommi again, and Ozzy sings it with absolute meaning. But it's a great song with so many different light shade, and it was in the live set forever. I'm going to finish on 2 on CD, just because they suddenly crossed my radar as I was pulling this together. Give Me Back My Bullets by Leonard Skinner, because that came out in early 76, but the real one that I wanted to focus on, also from 76, is One More for the Road. This is one of those classic live double albums. There it is, I just about see it, sorry. But this is, I wonder whether a lot of people who felt that when you get into a band at that time, you couldn't afford to buy the entire catalogue. Now, of course, you can suddenly think, well, I'm going to get the entire catalogue, I'm catching up. But then it was too expensive, and there was so much other stuff coming out that you just couldn't afford to do that. So this, from the Atlantic Fox Theatre, this live album was a chance of you having some Leonard Skinner in your album collection, record collection, without having to worry about some of the early ones, because all the classic tracks were on here, really. I Ain't the One, Saturday Night. Well, actually, I'm going to say that Saturday Night Special off this is definitive. Would you agree? Saturday Night Special? In fact, although this is my playlist for this week, I'm going to play that straight after I finish this video. I just absolutely love that. Searching, Travelling Man, Simple Man. Whiskey Rock and Roller, The Needle and the Spoon, Give Me Back My Bullets, Tuesday's Gone. Give Me 3 Steps, Call Me the Breeze. Oh, T for Texas, Sweet Home Alabama. Do you know, that's probably the only Leonard Skinner track I actually don't listen to. I think I've just been overdone and I've never really connected to it. Sorry. And Freebird. There's others as well, but Freebird. Did I reach a point where I was fed up of Freebird? Yes. When people used to put Freebird on the jukebox, I used to sometimes go and stand outside because I thought, oh, no, you've got to wait all this time before something else comes on. How do I feel now? I would never do that now. It's a bit like Stairway to Heaven. I would never do that now. The way, the lyrical message and that final line before the guitars come in, Fly Free Bird, yeah, or whatever. I feel that now. I feel that like a call to action, like a call to arms, like a raging against the dying of the light, of keeping yourself young at heart, keeping the flame of the inner teenager alive and kicking as you listen to this music that will never grow old, ever. Freebird by Leonard Skinner, one of the best live double albums of all time. So that is my first look at 1976. So put in the comments what you would put down on your 1976 playlist, because I'd love to see them, and tell me what you think I should have put in, although it will probably appear in a later episode. But remember, music is the healer and the doctor. It really is. Get a Now Spinning Magazine t-shirt, wear it with pride. Drink your favourite beverage out of one of these exclusive mugs. Become a patron or YouTube member and get access to 2 of the most fantastic rock and roll communities on planet Earth, the Now Spinning Magazine Facebook group and the Now Spinning Magazine WhatsApp groups. and of course, our own pub. Yes, a pub, a virtual pub called the Now Spinning Arms, where we meet up twice a month. So remember, keep spinning those discs, stay safe, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon.